Edgar Degas and Petaluma together again for the first time. It's funny to say that, but in fact, it's really true that Degas was, for somebody who's known as this kind of permanent Parisian, he was a travel man. He was the only Impressionist that ever came to America. Edgar Degas had two brothers. He was the oldest, Edgar. He had the middle brother, Achille, who we see on the screen, and he had his youngest brother, Rene. His other two brothers, the brains were inhabited by sawdust their whole lives. But his two brothers wanted to go into the import-export business with some backing and support of their uncle, who was named Mousson, who was a cotton trader in New Orleans. And so at one point in 1872, Edgar and Rene went and took a boat, I believe, from Le Havre to Liverpool, from Liverpool to New York. Degas spent a couple of days in New York, and then took a train down through Louisville to New Orleans. And he was there for about 6 months and lived in New Orleans. And he, I think he took a boat back from New Orleans to France. But while he was there, Edgar Degas painted, in many ways, arguably the greatest and most incisive painting painted in the United States in the 19th century. Greater than almost anything by Homer, or Thomas Eakins, or the Jolly Flatboatman by George Caleb Bingham of Mississippi. And the reason I say that is this painting that he painted, he started it in New Orleans, but brought it back to France, finished it, was a painting that summed up that particular moment in America in the 1870s, which was the cotton market in New Orleans. And it was a scene about American business. It was about a bunch of guys sitting there deciding, talking business and seeing who they could screw next, so to speak. It was all about business and making money and moving ahead, the kind of manifest destiny which America was very much a part of in the 19th century. Degas painted numerous paintings, and he started and painted numerous paintings in New Orleans, did many drawings and paintings of family members there. And when he went back to France, he took every single work with him. One of the reasons we're here this evening is the greatest collector of Edgar Degas in the 19th century was Edgar Degas. And I'll go into that in a moment, why these works are here, and I'll go into the background. But first I want to say that this is actually my second show at the Petaluma Arts Center. A few of you might have even seen my first show, Anonymous, a couple of years ago, which was an exhibition of anonymous photographs, and God help me, my collection of 19th century abstract quilts. It was really a beautiful show. I loved it. It was really nice. And last fall, my friend Joe McDonald, who has got his photography studio here at Petaluma, and with Bill Kane runs the Ice House Gallery, he knew about this Degas exhibition because he took all the beautiful photographs for this catalog for the show. And he knew the show was traveling, and actually the show was towards the end. He said to me, is there any way that the Petaluma Arts Center could have the Degas show? And I said, you can't afford the Degas show. I said, no, you can't afford it. You forget it. He said, well, can you look at the schedule? So I looked at the schedule. I'm not the guy that, packs it and crates it. There's the Landau Traveling Exhibitions that handles all those things. I curate the shows and stuff. So we looked at the schedule, and the show was going to be at Tulane University this spring, where it was, at the Newcomb. And then it was going to have one final stop at the University of Illinois, downstate, I think, Urbana, this fall, and then the show was going to be over. This exhibition will not travel anymore. But we looked at the schedule and we said, well, there's a window from the 20th of June to the 26th of July where you could have that show. Would have a reduced fee because it's a shorter venue, but you could have it that time. And God help me, the people here in Petaluma, all those wonderful names on the wall there out in front of the exhibition, came together, raised the money, and here's the show in Petaluma. So I'm really proud of the city of Petaluma. I'm also pleased because the show's traveled to various places. It was at the Frick Museum in Pittsburgh. It was at the Portland, Maine Museum. It was at the Fundación Canal in Madrid. They did a 4-story banner on the plastic Castilla with a little girl. It's on the cover of the catalog. That was pretty impressive. Even a drunk could find that show. It was really great. Anyway, we came out of the subway and there it was. It was fantastic. Anyway, the show, but the only 2 places where I actually got to design and install the exhibition was the first venue at Naples, Florida. Have you ever been to Naples, Florida?
Yes.
It's early September, though. It's 117 degrees. You know, you want to go to cool off in Kuwait or someplace. Anyway, so I was able to design and install the first show because they weren't sure how to do it, and I never installed the show before. I'd never seen the show before, so they nicely asked me to go and do that. So I did that. And here, they kindly allowed me, working with Kathleen Hanna here, to put the show together here, to design, pick the wall colors and all this other stuff and hang the show. So if you don't like the hanging, it's tough luck, because it's, you know, and of course each place the show is, it looks completely different. I should say, I recently saw the Turner exhibition at the Getty Museum in late March, and I saw the Turner exhibition recently at the Young Museum. And it's not one is better than the others, but they're different. And so it's like two symphonies playing Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. It is Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, but it's going to be a little bit different, maybe not radically different, but a little bit different each time. And that's what you do with an exhibition like this. Let's go back to the beginning. I've got quite a number of slides to go through, and I'm going to be going through them fairly rapidly because there's lots of them. And I don't believe it's a breakfast buffet afterwards, so and you know, we curators, we tend to sometimes go on and on. So I'm going to try to go rather rapidly. But one of the things that I have to say, and then we'll go quickly through some of the slides for a while, is that people have asked me why Degas, which is a perfectly reasonable question. And the reason I started with Degas, just like you all started with Degas. He's the guy that did ballerinas and horse racing, and the occasional nude or woman getting out of the bathtub. And I went to McGill University in Montreal, and then I later went to NYU. And my early interest in Degas was as this Impressionist painter, but Impressionism wasn't a major focus of my early career was in Northern Renaissance printmaking. You know, that was a focus. So it's slightly different. But what happened was that when I started thinking about Degas, I realized that landscapes and trees and the time of day was not what Degas was interested in. He was interested in people. He might have been a little like Mr. Wilson, who was the grumpy neighbor of Dennis the Menace in his own personal life, but he was very incisive and very thoughtful in terms of the way he saw the world. He saw the world with a very interesting perspective on people and on gesture and on nuance. He was a very psychologically incisive person about the way things really are. You all must go see the Turner show at the Degas. It's fabulous. Turner couldn't paint a human being to save his life. When you go to see the show, the figures, the few figures that are in his landscape paintings are pitifully terrible. But it doesn't matter, because his landscapes drop you to the floor. They're so goddamn beautiful. He was so ahead of the Impressionists. I mean, they must have thought he came out of a spaceship painting those goddamn landscapes. So everybody has these different strengths. And Degas' strength was the human condition, human being. And he was so great at it. And that was the thing that slowly but surely got me interested in him. Then there was a question of money. And the first work of art I bought in 1973 when I was a young curator, assistant curator at the Baltimore Museum, I didn't have any money. And the first work I saw that I could afford by Degas was perfect. It was the wrong medium, it was the wrong size, it was the wrong subject. It was a little monotype of 2 trees. Monotypes, most people don't know what a monotype is. You put ink on a plate, you print it, run it through a press, so it's a drawing, but it's a printed drawing. So that confuses people immediately, you see. So that was perfect. And it was small, and it was of trees. No ballerinas on horses, no nude ballerinas on horses. That'd be perfect. Boy, if you could have that, you'd have the trifecta for Degas, wouldn't you? Anyway, so it was perfect. It cost $1,300. I paid for it over several months. And that kind of started it. And this whole show is kind of crazy, because I never thought I'd have this much of either Degas or his circle. In fact, when the show was initially organized, we were thinking of just a smaller Degas show. And then suddenly, one day, probably in the shower, I had a little light bulb around, and I said, I've got all these artists that were friends of Degas. Why not expand it and make it about the milieu of Paris in the 1880s, 1890s, that whole circle, and then have all the labels interchanged with telling you why these people were friends of Degas and stuff, and so the rest is this exhibition. So I never started out to do a show, to form a collection that would be like this. It was one at a time. That's how collectors collect. I mean, I like to say, how did I get this collection the old-fashioned way? I inherited it, but I didn't. Each one of these books required one at a time. So I'm going to go through a few of these. Some of them I'll just kind of tell you what they are, and some of them I will tell you a little bit more about them. There's lots of them, so let's begin. The first one on the screen is a portrait of Achille Degas, and this is the brother. This is the brother of Degas. And what's fascinating about this work is that it is 1853, which was it's known to be the earliest dated drawing by Degas. So we know exactly when it was done. He was only 19 years old when he drew his younger brother. And there's a wonderful kind of absolutely sophisticated way he drew his brother with his arm over the chair and all of that. I also remember this drawing because I bought it when the French franc was still in use, and it was the lowest the French franc had been in 30 years when I bought it in Paris, and I was really happy. I bought a major Corot drawing the same day for the museum, and it was the same really low price. And the museum has this fabulous Corot drawing, and I was really happy about both of them. Next slide, please. I can tell you more about this guy. All right. This is a self-portrait of Edgar Degas. You say, well, how could it be a self-portrait of Edgar Degas? It's a profile. All you have to do is 2 mirrors. Instead of 2 mirrors, you do self-profile. You can do a self-portrait profile. That's all. This is a drawing that my parents owned. This is a drawing that I urged my parents to buy. They loved it. They owned it their whole lives. They left it to me. You look at the stamps on the bottom of the drawing and see, what are the stamps about? Well, the stamp on the red stamp on the left-hand side was the stamp from the Degas estate sale, and the stamp on the right-hand side is the one of the relatives of Degas that put stamps from their collection on the prints. You should know about Degas. One of the ways about collecting is that it is passion, desire, opportunity. Okay? In terms of Francis Bacon, I have tremendous passion, I have tremendous desire. And if I won the Powerball lottery, I still couldn't buy one because they're like, $40 million. So it's no good saying, well, I'd like to buy Francis Bacon unless you own a startup company that just got sold for a lot of money. So you have to have the opportunity. And opportunity in the case of Degas was a fairly prolific artist who sold only what he absolutely had to and kept everything else. Everything else. And what happened with Degas is, towards the end of his life in the early 20th century, his older friend named Gustave Moreau died, and they formed the Gustave Moreau Museum in Paris. Has anybody been to the Gustave Moreau Museum in Paris? Okay. It's wonderful. It's very 19th century. It's got a spiral staircase up the front. It's very, overstuffed sofas and all of that, And the problem was that when Degas went to visit it a year or two after it opened, Degas walked in and he thought it looked like a mausoleum. He said, I don't want my own works to look like this. and it shot. He was thinking that maybe there'd be a Degas museum. He thought, because he was a bachelor, he didn't have a family to leave the collection to, but it just didn't make sense. He didn't like the Moreau Museum, and that soured him on that idea. And so when he died, there was this giant estate, and they had these 4 big estate sales with paintings and pastels and all of this other stuff. But by the time they had the 4th estate sale, and they still had more for a 5th estate sale, everybody that possibly could have a Degas had a Degas in Paris and London and whatever. And to have a 5th sale would have been a disaster. I was using the analogy the other day. What if he's 95 years old and he could still beat any of us in singles tennis, but when Wayne Thiebaud finally passes on, what if the Thiebaud family had an estate sale over 6 sales with 4,000 Thiebaud's, drawings and paintings and pastels? It would completely depress the market, because everybody that would possibly have wanted a Thiebaud would have one, and the prices would go down. It would be kind of disastrous. Well, that's what happened with Degas. They put so much on the market that finally a lot of the works of art, they just simply canceled the 5th sale. Well, the 5th sale, a lot of them are the net proof Degas with a little stamp on the corner, you see. So, and my point being that when I started getting interested in Degas in the 70s, you could still buy a Degas drawing in Paris for $500.
Wow.
Not a print, a drawing. Not this one. This was a much more expensive work. It's this beautiful, haughty, early self-portrait, which my parents bought it because I couldn't afford it. Next slide, please. These are the sorts of drawings you can still buy. Degas once said that when he was a little boy, he and his younger brother Achille were taken to the Louvre by his father, and Achille slid on the wax floors of the Louvre, and he actually looked at the pictures, and that made all the difference. And so this is the sort of thing that as the young artist, Degas used the Louvre as his studio, as his laboratory. This is a drawing of a Etruscan vase. The next slide, please. Here's a drawing where Degas. One of the things that's so beautiful about drawings. A writer once said that looking at an artist's drawings are like reading somebody's mail. They tell you something kind of behind the scenes, things that you don't see publicly or you think about publicly, and it's really true. Degas did not do this drawing to sell to you. He did not do this drawing to present to you. He did this drawing for himself. In fact, one of the things you should also know, that I own 21 Degas drawings. Every single one of my drawings was still in his portfolios when he died. Mm-hmm. Not one of them did he ever sell. These are drawings he did for himself, and these are drawings that he did for his own purposes. That what you see here is, and below you see a head of Etruscan sculpture, which is inanimate, and then you see the legs of a studio model that are alive. Next slide, please. And here's another one where, again, you have the head of a Greek sculpture above on the upper left-hand corner, and you have not one, not two, but 3 studies of an arm of a male model in the studio. Delacroix once said you should be able to, a good artist should be able to draw somebody falling out of a window from the 3rd floor before they hit the ground. Next slide, please. This is a drawing that has a curious story which you can read on the big introduction. I was at an auction in London, and this was a minor afternoon sale in London years ago, and there was a drawing with a very low estimate, a double-sided, quote, academic drawing by Degas, which meant people weren't interested in it. And there was an important old master sale the next day, and I got with a bunch of my colleagues in the other room, and we were talking about these old master prints. And this drawing was like lot 284 or something in the sale, and I got caught up in a conversation, and finally I lost my time frame. And I got to go back and bid on this thing. And I went back in and I said, what lot are you on? And they said 291 or something. And it was after my lot. I said, oh my God, I've missed my lot. And I said, how much did lot such and such bring? And they said it was BI, nobody was interested in it. So after the sale, I put in a lower bid, and I got it for even less than I would have bid on it. And it was a double-sided drawing. It was this side. And by the way, you see in red chalk on the right, that is The Dying Slave by Michelangelo in the Louvre, which Degas made a copy of. The next slide, please. And this is the other side, which again studies from the from Greek sculptures and the study of the knee. I often say with my studies of arms and legs and knees and faces, if I keep buying these things, I'm eventually going to have a whole human being by a good thing. So I'm just working on that right now. Next slide, please. Also, here is, if you go to Mantegna and you see the crucifixion by Degas. Mantegna was one of the great Renaissance artists. There's a wonderful painting by Mantegna in the Louvre, and this is one of the dying slaves. This is one of the thieves, crucified thieves, in the painting by Mantegna, which Degas made a copy of. And the next slide, please. And this is the head of a painting of the Virgin with the Christ Child on a green cushion by Solario. At the time that Degas did the copy, it was thought to be by Leonardo da Vinci, but now it's known to be by Andrea Solario. And this is, again, one of these copies after Degas, which at that particular time, in the 70s and early 80s, nobody cared about. People, the people with money wanted ballerinas, horses, or nudes, or none of the above. You know, they didn't want these other things. And so nobody cared about these, and I'm so happy about that. Next slide, please. This looks so much better this big. I wish the drawing was this big. It's actually only about that big. Again, this is a drawing that snuck through a little sale at Christie's South Kent, which is the minor sale auction room for Christie's in London. And this is Degas. This is Degas as a portrait after Filippino Lippi. So here Degas disguised himself as an old master, as a Renaissance painter. Next slide, please. I mean, if you know Degas, you know that that's him. This is a drawing. If you see the actual drawing, it looks much better than this. This drawing had some foxing, as you see, which is now been completely cleaned. And one of the things that happened with me is that when I went down the assembly line for language skills, God was at lunch. And when I went to McGill University, I was getting A's in everything, and I was getting D's in foreign language. And they took pity on me at McGill University and said, he's a language dyslexic. He just doesn't get it. And it's really true. I mean, the only way I get things in the flea market is a Post-it note and a pen. They write the price, they show it to me, I cross their price out, I write my price, they cross my price out, they eventually get it somewhere. So language is not my strong suit. But, you know, as Will Rogers said, everybody's ignorant just in different subjects. And everybody has strengths just in different areas. And one of my strengths is I've got a really good visual memory. And there was a sale, this will just take a few minutes, but it's an interesting story. There was a sale of a rich oil man who had a fancy house in London, and he was selling out and retiring and moving to Portugal. Good choice. And he put out a catalog for his sale, and I got a copy of the catalog, and so it was paintings and furniture and silver and china and all sorts of stuff. And in the sale was Studio of Degas, £200 to £250, or after Degas or something, you know. And I called up Christie's and I said, well, why is it's got the estate stamp on it, why is it by Degas? And they said, oh, the Degas expert says it's not by Degas. I said, okay. It was unillustrated. I said, well, at least could you send me a photograph of it? Well, they said they would, but they didn't. It was only £200 to £250, you know, it was nothing. They just blew me off. This is before the internet. This is like 20-some years ago. So as the sale got closer, I kept, in the back of my head, I said, what the hell is that thing? But I had no photograph, and I certainly wasn't going to bid on it sight unseen. And then a day or two before the auction, I was looking through the catalog again, and they had a couple of these larger kind of architectural digest photographs of kind of scenes of rooms. Mm-hmm. Son of a bitch, there was the drawing in a frame leaning up against a chair, and I looked at it and I said, shit, I know that drawing. That was in a sale catalog. That was in a friend of mine's dealer's catalog from 20-some years ago. And it's real. It's a portrait of Degas' father. And I looked up this price, and it had brought like $15,000 or $17,000 20 years earlier. and it was coming up, and so I knew what it was. And I knew the one person who would really screw me up is the dealers from Munich who sold the drawing years ago. If they got this catalog, I was toast. Okay? I also knew that if I called Christie's and said, well, I'd like to bid on that 200-pound drawing, that would set up a red flag. So it was a really ugly piece of brown furniture one lot before, and I said, well, I'm really interested in that ugly piece of brown furniture. Could we set up a telephone bid on the ugly piece of brown furniture? So when that came up, of course, I didn't bid on it. And then I said, well, there's one thing I'd like to, the next lot, and I got it for $250. But I was I had a couple of $1,000s, but I knew if the people from Munich knew about it, I was completely out of the water. So I thank goodness for my memory sometimes. Next slide, please. This is a drawing that was owned by this person who could have played the Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz, a woman named Huguette Perez. She had wonderful taste, and she had absolutely no personality whatsoever in Paris. And she was known to be really cruel in terms of just, she was kind of like that. The maitre d' in LA Stories that said, when Steve Martin said, I'd like to order dinner now, I like the chicken or the lamb. He said, you can't afford the lamb, you can only afford the chicken. And this woman was that difficult. She had bought this drawing so inexpensively, even with her enormous price, it was still within my range. And I said, I was so happy. I said, I actually can get something from her. This is a drawing. It's just a drapery study. It's a study for painting, it is. But this is the sort of drawing you look at and you say, this is why Kenneth Clark said that Degas was the greatest reference since Leonardo da Vinci. Next slide, please. This drawing has an interesting history. This is a drawing I desperately tried to get for the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco. And it just so happened that I'd just come back from Europe about 6 weeks before, had found wonderful things. We had an acquisition committee. I'd spent most of the available money. I got wonderful things, Guercino, Richard Dadd, watercolor, wonderful things in the museum collection. And when I got this photograph across my desk, I went to the director, Ian White, and I said, isn't this a fabulous thing? And he said, how much money do you have? And I said, I basically had nothing because we bought these other things. He said, well, Degas was very prolific. There'll be other drawings, which is true. But I said, but this drawing is going to be gone. He said, well, that's the way it is. And as I was leaving, I said, well, you don't mind if I try to get it? And he said, no, if you want it, if you can. And I don't know what the hell I was doing because I contacted the dealer. I said, I have $1,000. I will send you $1,000, which was a fraction of the price. It was summertime, and a lot of European dealers like to spend long vacations. And so they weren't going to be back to September. And I said, well, that gives me about 2 months. I'll send you the money, you send me the drawing. If I can't raise the money, I'll send you the drawing back, and you'll send me the money back. I said, fine. So I had to throw things out of my collection, some of which I sold for profit, some of which I sold for what I paid for them, a lot of things I sold for a loss. But I raised the money, and I got the drawing, and I still have the drawing. And that was 30, long time ago. It's a beautiful drawing, but I cannot understand for the life of me. It's one of those kind of psychic, crazy things about Edgar Degas. Here he is, as a young man, in Florence, doing this drawing of this family's child. And he's done this absolutely exquisite drawing. As I say, it's an old lady in a young face. She has a wonderful kind of, this is my Mona Lisa, okay? This is my Mona Lisa. She is so beautiful. She has that, is she smiling or not smiling? It's that wonderful kind of moment. And it's so beautiful. It's on this beautiful plum-colored paper. I mean, it's just a dream of a drawing. Degas did this drawing. The parents saw the drawing, I'm sure. Degas took the drawing and put it in his portfolio, and they never saw it again. It's like, holy moly. You think these things were out there in the world from the families that own them and stuff, but Degas was just very tight-fisted with his creativity. It's just kind of a nutty thing, and it doesn't make me either hate Degas or like Degas. It's just the way it is, that he would do these things and then retain them, that he needed them. He needed them to think about them again. I'm sure he probably taught the family, maybe I'll go back to Paris and make a portrait painting of your daughter and you'll see it later or whatever. Of course, he never did. Next slide. This is the drawing. One of the things is there's 3 drawings in the show where they're double-sided. And of course, artists that are using these for their own purposes, they don't give a shit. If there's something on the back of the paper, they flip it over and do a drawing on the back. So this drawing, in the next slide, please, is these are 2 studies for a major painting called the Degas of Jeffra, which is at the Smith College Art Museum. I mean, the painting is like 2 zip codes. It's really big. And it's a wonderful early history painting. And whoever was the director of curators at Smith were really smart because they bought absolutely brilliant purchases early on in the early 20th century. You just can't believe how inexpensive certain works of art were if you had a really clever person. But of course, the painting they bought was a big history painting, which would have cost them like 5 cents on the dollar compared to a ballerina or something. And so they bought this beautiful painting for Smith College, which this is a drawing study for. Degas did these drawings building up to one of these big finished works. Next slide. And of course, here I got four horse drawings on the same day at a boring Christie's afternoon sale in New York because nobody was paying attention, or it wasn't important enough. And again, remember, I formed this collection as a scholar on a scholar's salary, and so I was kind of nipping around the edges. I could never go into I could do wonderful things with the museum's money for major museum purposes, but for myself, it was all these, I think this is a beautiful drawing. Other people would think it's too slight. It's a jockey on a horse, but it's very slight. Next slide, please.